Okay, everyone's made a piece of art before, whether you've realized it or not. It could be that photo or video you've taken, and it might have even just been that nice painting that you made in grade school. But what if I told you humans aren't the only ones that can make art? Well, in that case, you may not even be surprised, as there's actually a couple of animals that have been known to make art too. But we aren't talking about that. We're talking about robots. Well, not exactly physical robots. More specifically, we're talking about artificial intelligence. But yes, AI can make art too, and sometimes it's actually really good, and other times it's kind of atrocious. So why is this such a big deal? The thought of computer-generated things isn't exactly new. We've been generating computer-generated graphics and 3D and animation and stuff like that, but I think the thing that makes it different is that with those things, there's kind of a hand-holding that goes along with it, where somebody monitors it along the way to make sure it looks how the vision is supposed to look. The AI works a little bit differently, as you just give it a sentence in about 10 seconds, and after that you'll have a picture. It doesn't even have to be simple either. It can be something as crazy as a zebra at a pizza party, and within 10 seconds, boom, you've got that realized in a digital format. And that's the part that's kind of crazy, is it can make these computer generated things happen all on its own. There's no more hand holding along the way. It has pure discretion over what it is that it's making. So how does this work really? Well, this program's trained on a repository of images. So you think about when it wants to make the art, it takes the text, then it goes and has the thing that's associated with each word in the text and makes the art based on that. And what this means is that sometimes it can be taken a little bit too literally, and it can put something out that maybe you weren't expecting. But other times the results it can have are actually shockingly good for how little time it takes. And the part that's even crazier about this is it kind of works similarly to the human brain. If you think about the way that humans identify objects, you look at something and then your brain goes back into its own repository and decides if it has something to reference that looks similar to that object. And if it looks similar, you've identified it correctly, and you can even get confirmation on that thing from other people or some other source. And Dall, the AI that we're talking about, has been trained in a similar way. It's been given a repository of images and trained to know which things are which, so when it comes time to making the art, it can associate them correctly. The thing is that it's making art given this text input, and it can do so with pretty good accuracy. And to do this, I think it works similarly to how a human can make art. A lot of the times we'll use other art or existing images as reference, and it seems that Dall does the same thing. It uses the images that it's been given over a long period of time in order to make something new out of the material that it's been given. But sometimes Dall and other AI generators will make creations that don't really look like something that exists right now. This can happen a lot with faces and letters, as they get kind of disoriented and sometimes they don't really make a lot of sense. But other than that, it's pretty cool to see these abstract things that it ends up making, and sometimes I think they're just some conglomerate of different images that it has mashed together. The other thing I find fascinating is that when it comes to Dall and these other AI generators, the strengths are really strong. The detail that you can get on some of these images is kind of crazy. The speed, I think, is probably one of the most interesting and useful features about it. You can generate 4 to 5 images in 10 seconds. And that's just what they let the users see. If somebody had just unrestricted access to this, they could probably generate hundreds of images in a very short amount of time. The accuracy, when it's accurate, can actually be very good. For example, a lot of the images that Dall includes on their homepage, like the avocado chair or the monster in the purple room, are exactly what a lot of people might think of when they think of these things. In addition to this, being able to apply different styles to the text thread in order to give it more specificity is even crazier. It's not like Dall just puts out one style of image. It can be oil painting, it can be in the style of the Mona Lisa, it can be a 3D render or a realistic photograph. But with all of those strengths being so strong, the weaknesses really do show. Some of these things can include not understanding the prompt at all if the AI hasn't been trained to identify those words. But on the flip side, this is also kind of interesting because you can see the way that it thinks about these prompts and the way that it outputs the information. The other weakness being that while it's simply not trained at all in some cases, it can be kind of weak in other cases. So if the AI has been trained on very few images of a thing, all of the images that it puts out are going to look super similar and you won't get a lot of variation. This kind of brings me into the next weakness, which is the bias of the AI. Sometimes certain prompts, it only wants to make a certain way. You can change all the other parts about it, but if the central subject that it's fixed on stays the same, a lot of the outputs are going to kind of be similar and it can be hard to change them. This works differently from the feedback of a human where you can tell them, this isn't what I was thinking at all, we need to completely change it. It doesn't really work like that for the text string. Yeah, you can reword it to try and get around it. Sometimes you can get something super similar to what you just asked it in another way. What makes this so crazy is just how similar it can be to humans and human artists. Human artists will draw a lot of inspiration from other artists or things that they see in the world. Life imitates art is kind of coming into question here. Except now there's an AI imitating life, imitating art, which I think is the part that makes it a little bit weird and not all that different. Another thing that I find pretty interesting is that it has assistive features as well. You can put in your own image and have it recreate it or add to it in a certain way. Not only does it make its own version of it, but you can also sample that one image to make more versions of that image, which is crazy because you can get so many different kinds of variations in such a small amount of time. Something that I think for most people would be super time consuming to make a lot of different variations and changing it in all these small ways. Another feature that I think is very cool, and actually was the way that I made the thumbnail for this video, was being able to add extra sample tiles to an image. For right now, the Dall generator makes a 1x1 picture for all of the images that it puts out. But if you wanted to change this or add to it, you can actually add another sample tile and it'll generate what would have been in that space of the picture. I made the personal choice and I was honestly torn between these two versions with the painting and the other wall. The parts that I think are kind of funny is that the ceiling continuity is spot on. The canvas continuity is also great, except the wall behind it kind of changes perspective a little bit. I guess you could argue that maybe there's another weird wall behind it, but that's not exactly what I would have pictured. There can also be improvements in the future as well. As more and more images are added and maybe as the AI is tweaked a little bit, it can output things more accurately to what it is that we are wanting from it. And honestly, I don't know what the future could mean for the AI. I don't really know what it looks like behind the scenes, but I would imagine that this could be expanded upon in a really meaningful way. I'm pretty sure that 10 years ago, we probably wouldn't have even imagined that this can be a thing, and now it is. I wonder if this is going to translate to larger pictures, maybe more accurate processing. Will it get even faster? Maybe it will even go to video. All of these things make me wonder what an entirely AI generated movie or like short clip would look like, or maybe even sound like. I'm not sure that this is gonna replace people by any means, but I guess it could get there at some point. But in order to do that, it's going to take a lot of training and probably maintaining behind the scenes for how this is developed. Though I would say the most likely outcome is that this grows more and more to be an assistive feature. Being able to generate all these different concepts and different versions of it is really useful when it comes to what the end product might look like, and it may go beyond art as well. I know that AI is used for problem solving behind the scenes for a lot of places, and there may be some more practical applications for everyday people as well. So is AI taking over, or are we all just overestimating something that's a little overrated? I wouldn't overthink it, but make sure you head over to the comments to let me know what you think.